Tēnā koutou katoa, koutou kua tai mai ki te whakarongo ki ngā kōrero mo tēnei kaupapa e kia nei he whare wahine. Nei rā maiwa ko Relinda, e kōrero ana mo tēnei kaupapa, tōna orokohanga mai, tōna tīmatatanga me ki, me tōna āhua tēnei rā. Nō reira, I muri tērā e homa, me mihi ka tika ki te rauora me tōna kitenga whānui, me tōna kitenga whakamua, me tōna tautoko mai I tēnei kaupapa, me ki te tupu kaha mai o ngā kōhine tamāhine o Ngai Taiwa, kia tūkaha ki roto I te āwhā me ki te ao whānui. Nei rā, maiwa, ko kiri mātou ahau, ko taku hōnei, ko Relinda, e mihi nei kia koutou katoa. Kia koitaringa mai, ane ngā kōrero o te wā. He kupu whakamihi hoki ki te ūhā I whakairungia I Kurawaka. Koene te tuapapa me ki o tēnei kaupapa o he whare wahine. Ki te heketanga mai o te ihi mārei kura, o te tini o te rahi, ki te mani whakakotahi ai, te ira atua me te ira tangata. Ko koe tērā e hinea huone e, nei rā mātou e ki ana, ko te whakaorahia anohia, te mana I whakatōngia I Kurawaka. Kia ora, Relinda.
He whare wahine recognises and pays homage to our mothers and our grandmothers who came before us. We acknowledge and recognise the dedication and commitment of our tipuna and our past and current Māori workforce who have done the hard yards out there. We honour those wahine Māori who have forged the pathways ahead, who have walked the hallowed halls of the system, those who have kept the home fires burning, and those who have committed their lives to give service to whānau, hapu, iwi and hapori. He whare wahine is unapologetic and is symbolic of the legacy and resilience that these wahine who came before us, who do the hard yards, who carry the mamae, who do all the healing and restoration. He whare wahine is a legacy of all of the mahi that has been done. Mei kore koutou, kua kore mātou, mā mātou tō koutou, moi moi a, e waha, e hiki, kia tau ai, koutou, oki oki.
Right, so that you may all sleep well, we'll pick up the journey from here and carry the load for the time that we're still here on earth.
The whakaputa to He Whare Wahine and the establishment and the vision of He Whare Wahine rests in the status, the mana of Māori woman and kōtiro. What we have seen, what we know is that since colonisation and the ongoing colonisation of our people, we have seen the impact of colonisation on the mana of wahine, the mauri of wahine. We see this in the mahi that we all do. We see this in the statistics from family violence. We see this from our stories where whānau find themselves in poverty, where wahine Māori are expected to live in the trauma of colonisation, live in the trauma from imposter tikanga, where they are victims of violence. We also see the impact of the status and mana of Māori wahine through addictions, through whakamomori, through mental health. And we also see this on a daily basis where we have our wahine Māori being held up against and being accused of not being actually good enough. We see this not only across and in mainstream, we also see this in our own whānau hapu and iwi. And it is this kaupapa and this story and their legacy and their experience that has contributed, that has driven our programs, our vision, and our goals under He Whare Wahine. Whakapapa lays down the relationships and connections that people have between each other and to the whenua and to the environment around them. This has been impacted by colonisation, by this idea that Māori women are reduced to the home and that they're only able to be mums, by this idea that they can only be work in certain sectors. We have this ideology out in our sector, out in mainstream, and unfortunately through other communities, our own communities, where Māori women do not have the status that they did as they once used to before colonisation. We also know that prior to colonisation, Māori women were rangatira, Māori women were tohunga, Māori women held audience. Unfortunately, we don't have this notion anymore around Māori women being on equal to our Māori men. Part of He Whare Wahine is to revitalise, restore, reclaim, and reimagine our place and our purpose as Māori women and our kōrero that come through. Our goals for He Whare Wahine, to be able to restore, reclaim, revitalise and strengthen the status of Māori woman, is aimed at oranga, mana and rangatira. Our oranga wahine goal is to develop strong reflective practitioners who place wahine and her whānau at the centre of their practice. The importance of this oranga wahine stream and developing and building the capacity and capability of our workforce, both our health and social workforce, is it provides a gateway and a platform for our Māori wahine and their whānau to be treated in a way in which enhances it, adds value and enhances their mauri, their mana, and ensures that they are taken care of. We do this through the development of wānanga, of training that we offer, and we'll get to that through our slides. In terms of mana wahine, the po of mana wahine, the aim is really to restore the mana wahine Māori and kōrero in and across whānau, hapu, iwi and hapori. And this is really critical for her ora, for the ora actually of not just her, but also her whānau, hapu and iwi. The restoration of mana, as we've heard, has been impacted on. Her mana has been impacted on for decades and now centuries. The whānau and wahine that we work with out in the sectors of family violence and addictions and mental health need a lot of restoration, a lot of healing, and a lot of empowering to be wahine Māori and to be proud of being wahine Māori. Our rangatira po enables strong Māori women and kōtiro through te reo me ona tikanga. And a rangatira wahine, our aim is to restore this status for our wahine so that they are leaders, not only in the boardrooms, not only in academia, but actually leaders in their home, leaders at the kitchen table, leaders wherever she goes, and that she is respected for her leadership, for her mātauranga, for her pathway, and for her reality. He whare wahine is achieving our goals through the delivery and the development of different wānanga. For Oranga Wahine, we have Te Akina Te Ahuru Mowai. This was a wānanga that was created and developed back in 2015. The wānanga places wahine at the centre of the practice of practitioners, and the importance of placing her and her whānau at the centre is that she's allowed to drive that pathway, the pathway that has not been a great experience for her, especially when you come through the family violence response system. It hasn't always been a pathway for her where she's been able to drive through the health system, especially when our wahine Māori are dealing with addictions and mental health as well. So Te Akina Te Ahuru Mowai is about ensuring practitioners build their capability up around ensuring, one, that her voice is at the centre of their practice, and two, that she can drive how fast that pathway goes, where she wants that pathway to go, and where that end destination is. We're also developing practice conversations with specialist practitioners across a different field, such as the family violence field. And these practice conversations, they focus in on providing the reality, working in this space, as well as giving some awesome and wonderful tools that come from te ao Māori, such as wānanga with the whānau, rather than tell the whānau what to do, as an example. Give some tools for all the other practitioners who are working in this space and is needing and actually work with our whānau Māori. One of the third one that we're actually looking at is kaitiaki, a kaimahi wānanga. This originally started off in the space of trying to develop a wānanga for the CEOs, for managers, for supervisors who actually work with the practitioners who are out there in the field. And the kōrero from our practitioner wānanga with Te Akina Te Ahuru Mowai from the practitioners was that they want to work in a way that adds value, that centres wahine Māori, centres the whānau in their practice, but they had struggles and challenges within their own agencies around quality versus quantity, the number of cases or whānau that they work with. They had struggles with their agencies working from within a mainstream deficit. What was wrong with whānau, what is wrong with whānau space, and they challenged us to come up with a wānanga in which we could actually work alongside their leadership groups. So kaitiaki, a kaimahi wānanga, has been developed through that. For mana, it's been really, really important to ensure that we have a number of streams in which we can build the capability of the workforce to recognise in different ways te ira tangata, te tuakiri o te tangata, te ara whakawhanaungatanga, ways in which practitioners can help build mana, revitalise, strengthen and restore mana of wahine Māori in the first instance, but of Māori whānau in general as well. With rangatira wahine, our aim, as you've heard, is to build the status and mana of wahine Māori through our rangatira pou, through Te Reo me o ngā tikanga. So we currently have a Te Reo wānanga happening weekly at the moment within Te Rau Ora for our staff. And we intend to develop and build those areas through Te Reo Te Wahine, Te Tuakiri o Te Tangata. Did you want to add anything to that at all, Kiri?
Other than to say that at the moment, a lot of this is in development. There's some things that are actually happening, like Te Akina Te Ahuru Mōwai, Te Tuakiri o Te Tangata under Mana Wahine, and Te Reo Te Rauora under Rangatira Wahine. The rest are thoughts in that have, and learnings that we've taken from other wānanga and brought them here as a kai for frontline practitioners. And we'll get in a bit further as we go through the slides. But yeah, so this is it in operation, operationalising the goal, basically. Yep. So Te Akina Te Ahuru Mōwai was developed in 2015. Basically, as we're saying, a common sense approach to keeping Māori women in general alive and children affected by violence and abuse alive. The Family Violence Death Review Committee in 2015 found that the family violence sector was negligent in their care and upkeep of women's safety, women's and children's safety. It found that out of the cases that they investigated, and I think there was about 19 cases that they investigated, just correct me if I'm wrong, Polly, that they found that these people, these children, these women had presented to providers, either their GP, either the social welfare, Oranga Tamariki, someplace. They'd already presented 18 months prior to their death and disclosed their lack of safety and disclosed their fear. And the Family Violence Death Review Committee basically found that these women didn't have to die, these children didn't have to die, that there was a way of going about in practice that could have kept them alive. And it found that not just the family violence sector, but all these other sectors, anywhere that touches on the lives of our people, were negligent in keeping our families alive. And so Te Akina Te Ahuru Mōwai, in order to develop this program, we went about asking frontline practitioners and surveying frontline practitioners about what do you need to know in order to look after our women, in order to keep them alive, in order to keep them in a place of safety. And we got back a number of clear messages. One of them was we need to know how to work with Māori. We need to know how to work with her if she wants to stay in the relationship. Therefore, we need to know how to work safely with families. We need to understand who's who in the zoo, who's the sector. And we need to have a greater handle over tikanga Māori approaches and models of practice. Mm-hmm. So Te Akina Te Ahuru Mōwai flips the script on its head, and it actually bases the woman in the central role, whereas if you look at how things are done these days, she's taken out of that central role, and it's given the focus is taken to the child, the focus is taken on the abuser, which is usually a male. And I'm not saying it is 100%, but it's usually a male. And that yet she's left with all the responsibility of answering to the justice lawyers, doctors, MSD, Oranga Tamariki. She is left in a place where she's responsible for everything that's gone on, yet she is a victim of violence, yet she is in a place of crisis, yet she doesn't, yet she may be physically and mentally incapable of making very big, very important decisions that have, as a result of this. So the Family Violence Death Review Committee's findings in 2015, I believe, are still relevant to today, 2022. And because I say this, even though we have oranga, whānau, ora, etc., when you're working with families who have had violence, have had a level of violence, you need to understand the impact of violence on families and how to keep every individual safe. And whānau ora, whilst it's a great way of working, I'm not criticising it at all. We need to have some really analytical workers and practitioners in those spaces of family violence. Relinda?
Ai, tautoko kiri. And we also need to specialise in these areas as well. And I think Te Akina Te Ahuru Mowai provides the foundation for that specialist practice within a Te Ao Māori framework and way of working. I also want to mention too, Kiri, the family violence sector found, and they've continuously found, as other research have found in the family violence space. And I also believe this would be very similar to the health space, to the education space, is that Māori women have been re-victimised over and over again, where they have started to believe that they are actually responsible for the violence that occurs to them and their whānau, and they are not. So part of He Whare Wahine is to rewrite that narrative for her, alongside of her, so that she can actually see the beauty that she has inside and not carry the burden of the system and the burden of other people that have been placed on her while she's been going through family violence or addictions or through mental health. And while she's trying to keep her whānau together, a prime example of that too, Kiri, is the uplift of our tamariki. Where there's so many examples where our tamariki have been uplifted by their mum, from their mum, who has been a victim of violence and never been a perpetrator. It doesn't make sense. That type of approach, as well as obviously outcome for her, is in her head, I am bad then, but it's not. The systems, as we said earlier, Kiri, the Family Violence Death Review reports have shown that actually the system is responsible for re-victimising our wahine and reducing them to a place where they are feeling like they are part of the perpetration, where they are feeling that they are bad mothers, where they are feeling that they are no good, that they're not good for anything. That is the impact that this has had on her mauri, her mana, and her sense of well-being.
Kia ora, Relinda. So currently, Te Akina Te Ahuru Mowai Wānanga are 2 days long. They've been run all over the country. You can find them on Eventbrite. We also are developing a one-day online wānanga, and hopefully be in combination with suicide prevention and mental health. We have a webinar series that we mentioned before, based on practice and practitioners experienced in Kōrero, real life people who work in this area, and they're about 15 to 30-minute practice-based kōrero. A one-day kaitiaki āmahi wānanga aimed at CEOs, lead execs, Pauwhirinaki, Tumuaki, Pauarahi, kaitiaki. And the pilot for this will be undertaken and started in 2 weeks' time. So, haere tonu. So, one of the things that we found as we were running these wānanga with Māori practitioners, not just Māori, Pākehā as well, was that the workforce would arrive at the wānanga and they're burnt out. They're burnt out. They're a bit, I guess, hesitant about what's going to unfold, because this, believe you me, the Chakina Te Ahuru Mōwai is no ordinary conference. It's not you'll sit down, come in and have a cup of coffee and park up and we're going to feed you all day with, through your ears and your mouth. It's actually an interactive and you're expected to engage kind of space. What we found from those frontline practitioners were they're tired. They were actually burnt out. They felt underprepared to do the work that they were expected to do, that their job descriptions or their job titles expected them to do. And
but we're also overwhelmed, Kiri, by the enormity and complexity that some of the whānau came with. So there was multiple issues. They weren't just dealing with, let's just say, addictions. They were dealing normally with family violence, addictions, some mental health, poverty. And if they had rangatahi, then they were also supporting their rangatahi who was also not in good spaces. So our practitioners that came to our wānanga were just reaching out, trying to find, please help. We need some tools. We need feeding. So the other thing is that they didn't get fed often because their agencies were so busy with the volumes that we have seen increase year after year after year, with no major sustainable interventions during this time. The workforce hadn't changed in regards to the increases in funding to grow your workforce, the funding to build your workforce capability through wānanga, through training. They were tired. They were tired, but what I loved about and what I love about the practitioners whare is, boy, they just want to do the best mahi they can do with our wahine, with our whānau. They will go beyond what is expected of them, but we've got to take care of them.
So what this wānanga, Manawahine, and under the po of Manawahine, is, I guess you could say, the restoration space where which recognises frontline workforce vitality, energy, and looks at rebuilding that. And actually what we noticed was that women of frontline practitioners were asking for a kai. Now, if they did manage to do professional development, it was mostly systemized conference kind of approaches of that looked after the system more than it looked after the whānau. What these wānanga under Manawahine, Te Tuakiri o Te Tangata, offers another way of looking at well-being. It offers another framework to understand a deeper framework to understand the anatomy of spirit and how it can be rebuilt from the inside out. So it's also offering a time out for frontline practitioners to come and have a kai, to come and do some learning, to be taken on a bit of a journey to regenerate so that they can go back and do their work. Te Tuakiri o Te Tangata is one of those wānanga, and it's running monthly till September. We've got dates until September now, and you can find those advertised on Eventbrite.
And also, aroha mai. I just wanted to add in here, Kiri, also, even though the mana wahine wānanga that we're developing and we've actually started to deliver is aimed at the practitioner's order and well-being and nourishment, it's also, we know that it will then go on to be embedded in their practice when they are working alongside wahine Māori in regards to helping the restoration and revitalisation of her mana as well. So it starts with us and then it flows on in our practice.
And the ultimate aim in the back of our minds for this po, Mana Wahine, is to have an international gathering of Indigenous healers, of Indigenous knowledge keepers, of Indigenous practitioners to cross-feed each other and to share our wellness strategies with each other that are Indigenous to us, really Indigenous. So Te Tuakiri o Te Tangata, the other kaupapa that Mana Wahine carries is Te Ira Tangata, which is basically what happens traditionally with the body from womb to tomb. What happens there, and it brings into account those who are present at birth and those who are present at death and those who are present throughout those two major events in our lives. And it talks about traditional celebrations and ceremonies that occur as our body matures and changes. So, Tira Tangata was the other kaupapa. Te Ara Whakawhanaungatanga was the other kaupapa. And it looks on how we can maintain connection with each other, not just with whānau, but with everyone that we work with in a positive and mana-enhancing way throughout our lives. So, yeah, kia ora. Join us for these kaupapa if you feel the need to regenerate, rejuvenate, and have a bit of a kai, e homa. Kia ora. He reo kōrero, he reo ora. Rangatira wahine, kia ukai po anō te reo. Currently running weekly reo and tikanga classes for kaimahi of Te Rauora. That was the first initial kaupapa. We'll start running monthly webinar series on tikanga, specifically around kaupapa that you bring to the table. Incorporating tikanga practices on a daily basis, normalising te reo throughout the long-term vision of this is to have bi-monthly one-day wānanga at different Te Rauora sites, increase language capacity within the organisations that already work alongside He Whare Wahine, and to develop an international language symposium for Indigenous activists of their language, and looking at the language and the healing aspect of language, well-being amongst language activists indigenously. Now, this kaupapa Rangatira Wahine is about uplifting and supporting kōtiro wahine to articulate in both languages their here, their emotional well-being, their emotional needs, becoming articulate in what we need and what we want and being able to say that. It's about bringing our voice to the hapu and iwi table and actually expressing it in those ways, in those places, and saying, actually, boys, time to have another think about the way that you practice and you behave, and having those respectful yet challenging conversations. We love them. So, he reo kōrero, he reo ora, te rau ora Māori language session. So this has only just started this year, e hoa mā, but keep your eyes posted. There is going to be growth in this space over time. So, he kōrero tau, Polly?
We also will be, alongside of this, we'll be delivering and reclaiming our space as wahine through karanga. So we will be delivering under this po the opportunity for wahine Māori to learn about karanga, to be confident in being able to do the karanga within your own area, within your own whare. And it's part of not just building her reo and building her mana through this, but it's part of the reclamation and claiming our space back. We all know that when we have different events that we all go to, that it's not easy to find a wahine Māori who can actually karanga these days, and we've seen the decline over the decades. So I think this is an important part, and as Kitty said, we're just in trying to develop all these different wānanga and different resources that can actually help centre and reclaim and restore and strengthen the place of wahine Māori. Kia ora, Kitty.
Yeah. Yes, I've got a lot to say about karanga, but I won't say it now. But basically, it's for us as women to take a hold of that space and to utilise that e hoa mā. Kia ora, Holly.
Cool. So the outcomes from our programs aligned to each of our po that we're actually wanting, and what we're looking for is under Oranga Wahine, we're wanting, in our whānau, our wahine are demanding and expecting a capable workforce, a workforce that is culturally responsive, a workforce that is confident and that comes from a place of what's right rather than what's wrong. It's not unusual when you work with whānau, when you work with wahine, that their kōrero or their story, their experience tells us that, whaia, they're always saying, this is what's wrong with you. This is how we want you to fix yourselves up. These are the consequences, and it could be the uplift of children if you don't fix yourself up. And this is the time frame that we're giving you. So that's a common kōrero dialogue that occurs between our statutory agencies and the whānau that we all work with. So having a confident workforce who comes from a place of empowerment of what's right with the whānau is a really awesome platform to actually start the practice from. We're also wanting a workforce who enables our whānau, our wahine Māori, to embrace and to drive her own mana motuhake, so that she's the driver of her life. She is the driver. She's able to go where she needs to go to get the right support and right help without any consequences coming back on her. For mana wahine, the outcomes we're looking for is that wahine assume their rightful place as leaders. And as I mentioned, and as Kitty has mentioned throughout this kōrero, it's not just in the boardroom, it's not just in academia, but actually on the marae. in her whare, her own whare, at her table. Wherever she walks, that she reclaims and assumes and is able to have her place as a leader in her life. And we're wanting also to have wahine to have access to resources, choices, and opportunities that have actually been taken away from her, that have been removed. Um, we're wanting wahine to be respected and honoured across whānau hapu, iwi and hapori, within her own home, wherever she goes. We're wanting wahine who are strong and confident in their identity, in their whakapapa, and in their place in the world. Under the po of rangatira, our outcomes are looking at wahine who are confident in their language and their tikanga. And we know from our own experiences, we know from kōrero with whānau and research, that if you have your language and you have your tikanga embedded in your life, that the outcomes around the socioeconomic outcomes are a lot better. Research supports all of this. We're wanting wahine to actively shape their destiny and their well-being. It comes back to that, as Māori women, we know what's right for us and we know what works for us in our whānau. We're wanting wahine to live in accordance with their mana motuhake, whatever this may look like, whatever this may be for her. We're wanting wahine to take their rightful place as leaders in the homes, communities, and across wherever she goes, across tribes, across communities, wherever she goes.
So I know that there will be at least one person listening who will be going, but what about our men?
Yeah,
Well, what about our men? And you know what, e honga, you cannot get a wahine Māori without a man, either a child, a husband, a brother, a father. We come with our men and we acknowledge our men. This kaupapa is about enhancing and supporting our women to regain that mana as installed at Kurawaka. So it is not without any thought or regard of our men. We absolutely acknowledge and would like to bring our men alongside us. There is no doubt about it. But at this moment, we're unapologetically focused on looking at the well-being of wahine Māori. So that's to answer the unasked question, you know. And who are we? Well, we're a little group of wahine Māori. We have Karina in the far left, in the back, Karina Coots, who's just finished her Masters in how Māori women have been portrayed in the media over the last 50 years. And her role as the lead in Oranga Wahine, leading out the family violence space, in support with me and Paul, Relinda, in support of her. Absolutely. So Karina's currently in Queenstown finishing off another wānanga. To her left, we have Miriam Marekura, a child of the river of Te Awa o Wanganui, a mokopuna of the maunga, those maunga kāhui o Ruapehu, Tongariro, Ngaruhoi, and who brings the kaupapa of mana wahine to the fore, restoration on tikanga practices of our tūpuna, and brings that to life for you in that respect. In front of her is Maia Pihima, who takes care of the language teaching of language, language revitalisation strategies, plans, and connections with other Indigenous iwi around the world. So Māora's primary focus at this time is to build the capability of language revitalisation within Te Raupara, and then secondly to market to a wider workforce audience. And then me and Polly.
Kia ora, Kerry. I also just wanted to jump in here and just say He Whare Wahine has been around since August last year. So as you've seen through our presentation and our kōrero today, we're in mostly development mode, although we have started to deliver across the 3 pou, as we've mentioned. I just want to acknowledge the vision and foresight of our tumuaki, whose vision actually enabled the creation of He Whare Wahine. So I just wanted to put that there.
Right. So kia ora koutou, mō wa koutou nā taringa I tēnei wā, o taringa hokoke I whakamau I ngā kōrero ātāhua rawa atu nei, o tēnei ata. Koutou I te kāinga, koutou I runga ngā rori, koutou e haere ake nei, e ara ake nei I ngā huarahi o te tangata, kia haumaru, kia mauri ora, kia tau te noho, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
We can stop.